Hi everyone. Unfortunately, my mic won't be working, but it's fine. I come from an Arab Algerian family, so I know how to scream. I'm very sorry we were stuck in traffic for a very long time, and now we figured this out. So once again, thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts for waiting. Thank you very much for attending our very first talk dealing with the representation of women in both modern and contemporary art and its evolution. So, just to give you some outlines about the genesis of how I thought about those talks. So, when I was commissioned to design talks on the occasion of this event, on the occasion of this exhibition, I was confronted to so many different artists. As you can see, we can see pieces of Salvador Dali, Pablo Picasso, Banksy, some iconic contemporary and modern artists, but which have nothing much in common. And so when I thought about the themes I could, work on, I thought about women. Simply because most of those artists presented in here really just had a very interesting relationship with female muses, with females more generally. And I felt like the way they portrayed women spoke loud about the relationship with women. And I said maybe it will be great to connect their careers and their approach of womanhood, of femininity, through also an analysis of the representation of women in both modern and contemporary art. So once again, I'm delighted to have you guys in here. My name is Youness Megherbi. I'm a UAE-based curator and exhibition designer. I would like to thank Art for All, one 110 Gallery for the opportunity. I would like to thank also Amar for allowing us to have such a magnificent exhibition in here. So as I said, I'm a curator, exhibition designer. I'm specialized in contemporary art and heritage. I've been lucky enough these past few years to curate worldwide exhibition in France, in Paris, in Tokyo, Japan. Last year, we did the Anti World exhibition, Anti World the Glam Factory exhibition to Foundry Dubai. And it's such a pleasure to renew a collaboration with Ahmad on the occasion of Unseen Masterpieces. I would like to thank my dear colleagues and speakers, Astrid Lesuisse and Jolaine Frizzell, for accepting to be part of this adventure and for preparing this talk with me. So let's start, if you may, with Jolaine. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Is it working now? No, not at all. Okay. Hello, my name is Jolaine Frizzell, and I have been living in Dubai for 10 years next month. And I have an art advisory. And so when I first moved to the UAE, I worked in commercial art galleries. Some of them you may have been to in Al Circal Avenue. I worked with Layla Heller. I worked with the Third Line, and I did a lot of that. Now I have my own art business. So I work with a lot of young artists. I work with emerging artists. I work with some institutions. And then I also work with private collectors, advising and doing all sorts of secret fancy stuff. So I'm really grateful to be here today. I've worked with a lot of local and Emirati artists, and I've been really excited to witness the development of the scene and to see how things have been changing since the time I've been here. So that's me.
Thank you very much. What about you, Astrid?
Yes, I guess. Oh, wow.
Oh, you're the lucky one. You're the lucky one. Allah.
I guess all the pressure is on me now. Well, first of all, thank you, Youness, Art for All, 1001 Gallery, and the Dubai Mall for this very thoughtful invitation in such a beautiful space. I mean, bringing art closer to the public is definitely a mission that I strive to achieve every day through my work. I've been here in the UAE for the past 6 years, promoting and celebrating artists, UAE-based artists, in growing their career, in also increasing their visibility to what I like to call emotional connections. To do so, I collaborate closely with 3 key partners. private collectors, galleries, and commercial spaces to develop original concepts for either exhibitions, events, or collections to help them stand out in very competitive markets, but also to achieve economic growth. And yeah, it's been a very nice journey and very, very happy to be here today.
We're all. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Astrid, for. Sorry, you wanted to add something?
No, I wanted to say that we could share the mic.
Logistics wise, I'm afraid. Let's see. Let's see how we, how we manage to do the whole thing, and then we'll see at the last minute if I'll rent your mic. So without any transition, we're gonna dig into the presentation, the talk itself. So basically, we divided this presentation through two different sections. So the first one, I wanted to call it From Use to Maker, Historical Framing. And basically the main question that we're going to ask right now is how were women represented in art pre-20th century? I forgot to mention it, but obviously such a theme could be a thesis. And it could be, the object of 400, 500 pages. But obviously, to, make it bearable for a talk, we had to, sum it up a little bit. So for the first study case, because obviously we're going to talk through study cases based on our knowledge of history of arts, but also based on our personal experiences. So when it comes to the representation of women in modern art, I wanted to talk about a very famous, iconic French portraitist, Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres. I feel bourgeois when I speak French. I like it. So what is very interesting with the portraits made by this artist is that obviously, just like any portraitist of the time, he mostly exclusively represented women from the upper class. So in a very demure, respectful manner, with very elegant dresses, very simple poses that somehow is inspired from the representation of women in Greek mythology. But apart from that, and I'm not going to dig into details for very obvious reasons, Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres also really liked to make nudes. And what is very interesting across the many paintings of nudes is that we can really somehow distinguish a fetishization of women, maybe an over-sexualization of them, but also more specifically portraits of women according to a male perception. And obviously in here, I chose an example which allowed us to see how he depicted women from the upper class in France. So in here we have a portrait of Madame Moitessier, who used to be at that time the daughter of the Ministry of Waters and Forests. And what is really interesting in here is that even if she is elevated, even if her social position is elevated, she is still very much depicted as flawless yet immobile. We feel like she is just a statue that doesn't really have a soul somehow. A certain switch, I wanted to have a transition with Edouard Manet, who's also a very famous Impressionist French artist. So here we have a portrait of Berthe Morisot, who's also a very celebrated female Impressionist artist. So what's very interesting in here is that there is a transition from depicting the very rich woman with, in here, elevating a woman as an artist. In here, she is dressed fully black. And as you can see, the light is very much focused onto her face, which allows us to directly focus onto her face. So in a way, I would personally qualify this painting as more humanizing. We feel like this woman has a bit more of a soul, if I may say. What I really like also about the way he depicted the face is that her face very much look more alive, contrary to the portrait of Madame Moitessier, from my perspective at least. And, you know, the fact that she is, we feel like she is moving towards us, which allows us in a way to feel like we're, as a viewer, in a conversation with her. And I think that it's a definitely more interesting, I was going to say positive, but interesting approach of doing a portrait. Yet, she is here depicted as, as a very still woman, and not specifically as an artist, meaning that, you know, for basically, Edouard Manet and Berthe Morisot were great friends. She could have maybe depicted her in her atelier, in her own place, creating, some pieces, but still somehow, for some reasons that are not of my business, that is not the case. Another example, and I would love also to benefit from your feedbacks, is a portrait made by Edgar Degas of American artist Mary Cassatt. What I feel even more interesting about this portrait is that Mary Cassatt in here, another very famous American portraitist, which, by the way, pretty much most exclusively portrait women, which is, something I believe we could point out. So what's very interesting in here is that she has an almost manly position. She relies basically on her laps. You feel like half of her weight is, supported by her laps. And she is holding some cards, photos, which give me the impression of being allowed to have a choice, having multiple choice into your hands, which I believe is a very interesting approach. In a way, I believe I wouldn't be the only one thinking that she is depicted in a more intellectual manner. I don't know, maybe because of the choice of the colors, the position, the carts. Also because, contrary to some very famous impressionist portraits of females, in here she is not forced to look at the painter. See her look is definitely not focused on the painter. Somehow we feel like she's, free somehow to walk, to take a look at the floor. So I thought it was also a nice example which allows us to have different approaches of how women were depicted in modern art. Astrid, would you like to rebound on those pieces?
Sure. Actually, quite a few elements to rebound to. But as you said, Mary Cassatt was definitely a major figure of Impressionist movement. Born in the US, but she made most of her career in France. She also passed actually in France. She was very close to Degas. Degas was one of her collaborators as well. And definitely that here, 19th century, the woman is still depicted as a muse, but a bit less, as you said, like more as an active woman. And if you go back to the portraits of Berthe Morisot, so here, Berthe Morisot and Mary Cassatt both are really prominent figures of the Impressionist movement. Berthe Morisot, for those who are into gossips, she ended up marrying Manet's brother. She was very respected by her peers, by Manet, Monet, Renoir, Pissarro, at the time of her leaving. But she was also very much forgotten for her work because, as you said, Youness, because of the gender biases at this time. Her work was very often considered as feminine, decorative, domestic, or minor. But what we can be pleased to see is that I had the chance to see a major retrospective of her work, Berthe Morisot, at Musée d'Orsay in 2018. after she was forgotten for some time. But when you compare to Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres, it's very interesting because, as you said, this is a very statuesque aspect of the woman. Here, she's the main character of the narrative. She's the main figure of the painting, but yet she seems like the main decoration. We can see that Ingres really focuses on luxurious details, on rich textures, and also something that I remember studying back in Paris during my time of art history major. I remember seeing also the way he distorts the female form. So Ingres relentlessly celebrated the human body, especially the female form, but he was distorting it for his own beauty ideal.
He was the Kardashian of the time. He had an extra bits, right? Exactly. So in the back, the elegant line of the back, he would add extra vertebrae in the back to create more of a beautiful surface.
Exactly, and I think actually, Jolaine, I think you're referring to La Grande Odalisque. It's a masterpiece by this French artist that you may have seen or you can see at the Louvre in Paris. And you're right, there's this very long, unusually long back. And you can see here a bit less, but slightly, with the right arm and hand. You can see how unusually long and curved it is.
It was actually, I believe, a very important criteria of beauty at that time. Having non-ending neck and, it was part of
Kardashian standards existed at that day.
There you go.
The way that, but you also have to remember, and I think that one of the things that this is a bit not as sophisticated as Astrid, but these were people sat for these photographs. These weren't photographs; they sat for them. So the moment and the motion, every day they would be sitting. These portraits would take 20 days, 30 days to be painted, and so the detail of the dress becomes as significant as the detail of the face. And I think that we're so because of photography, we don't know, we don't see that anymore. But I think it's really useful to look at this, the Ingres versus the Meursault and the Cassatt, to see how nothing about her personality is revealed. Right? I don't think that we understand what she's talking about. We don't feel like we get to know her. And I think that when you look at the personality in the next two works, you feel like you get to know them a little bit better.
You're right, and this is something we're going to see also with Pablo Picasso. The idea of prioritizing distortion for the artist's own aesthetic ideals, to here in this case, for an ideal beauty, Picasso is a bit different because it's more for...
It's a lot different. It's
similar with a different objective, yeah.
Definitely. Thank you very much, guys, for those insightful comments. So maybe we can right now have the transition we can dig into the section 2. So the woman as subject or object. So in here, so we're going to have study cases based on a few artists that are exhibited in here. So obviously, we have to talk about Pablo Picasso. So I have a pretty fun fact to tell you about it. So when I introduced the theme of the talk to Jolaine, obviously we started to discuss about this non-inevitable theme, which is cancel culture. Should we support, celebrate male artists who, mistreated women? And so when we discussed that, I said, of course, I was expecting us to discuss that at a point, but that was not my main priority. I'm not part of those people who believe we should, cancel those artists from the collections of those museums in France and Europe. Not at all. Why would we even, sue them? Because they're gone. They passed away. My point is just that in any type of consumption, I think it is best to know where it comes from. Whether you're eating a tomato or, enjoying a piece of art, to me, art is not only a form of expression, it's also a science. And I think that you tremendously appreciate and understand art when you dig into research about, the backstage, why is basically Dora Maar depicted that way? Why cubism? Why does she look somehow destroyed? And then when you dig into the way Pablo Picasso, when you dig into the private life of Pablo Picasso, everything somehow, becomes more understandable. So I talked too much. I'm actually thirsty. Do you guys have prior comments?
So Youness and I had a bit of a disagreement, but it was when we were disagreement on WhatsApp. So that isn't a real disagreement because you don't actually, but I said to him, sure, Pablo Picasso was a horrendous artist, like as a person. He was one of the most genius artists that have ever existed. I respect him so much artistically. His social life was horrendous. I don't mind keeping those separate. I am very much believing in the power of women, and I don't believe that any women should be treated poorly. However, I don't necessarily feel that we need to where that line of cancel culture exists is not clear to me for this person from a past. And so for me, I give him a little bit of grace because time was a bit different. I don't think that I wouldn't want to be his best friend if we were alive in this, and I probably wouldn't even want to buy his artworks and live with them because I think there's so many more exciting artists that exist. But how he changed modern art is undisputed. And so we I think agree to disagree a little bit, but I do think that it's something
Which
that we
is
should
fine, by the
continue
way.
to talk about. Yes.
It's perfectly fine. I don't have.
There's my position.
What about you, Astrid?
Well, when it comes to Pablo Picasso's legacy, when it comes to women, I find it quite complicated and often problematic, so I wouldn't dare to go too much into details. But what we can see actually is that women were vital to his creativity. Every phase of Pablo Picasso was attached, associated to a woman with a passion, love. But I would want to also maybe highlight Dora Maar. Dora Maar was an exceptional artist, a beautiful photographer, and she was often, and even still today, like a lot of us, I'm sure could remember her more as Pablo Picasso's muse than as an artist or photographer. And I remember when reading about her during my studies as well, that I was fascinated by the fact that she had her own photograph studio before she even turned 30, and that was in the 1930s.
And she was even already successful when she met, even before and established, even before meeting Pablo Picasso.
But I also think the times are changing because I think that the sort of new revisionist history, the feminist histories that are coming out are realigning, the women and what she did in his life. The photograph of the Guernica that she took is starting to, like, the stories are starting to be shared, and I think we're in a unique moment. Don't you think that things are getting better to share the fuller histories of what happened with that? I think Jackson Pollock and his partner Lee Krasner were the same situation. We'd never heard of Lee Krasner when I was studying university 150 million years ago. And now she's had major significant exhibitions and really is starting to be seen as a significant artist in her own right. And the art history is being redressed.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. I think, but I mean, either way, that's where we're doing talks, to nuance basically those very strong statements that are sticking to a certain ideology of how we should perceive artists and arts. And the same way our art allows us to find different ways of expression and understanding, I feel like debating art should basically follow the same directive line. When it comes to Dora Maar, and then if you may, I'll keep going with another example. What I find very interesting with Cubism is that it really allowed Pablo Picasso to deconstruct, and should I say, destroy the image of the multiple women he depicted. what's interesting is that, I mean, I have a very personal feeling when it comes to the portrait of Dora Maar among many other portraits of women of Pablo Picasso, because of course I see them as masterpieces, but it feels like almost a picture, as if Pablo Picasso took picture of those broken women, of those puzzled women, both, you know, internally and maybe in their outside appearance after getting to know Pablo Picasso. I can't help to have this, you know, compassion when it comes to those portraits. But still, just like we perfectly said, it doesn't cancel what Pablo Picasso has brought into modern art. It doesn't also, because, you know, at the end of the day, so many current artists have been inspired by Pablo Picasso. So still, it's very important to make, you know, the difference between both controversies. Now listening into Salvador Dali. So we went from a guy who said that there were two type of women, goddesses and doormats, to another guy, Salvador Dali, which was also a man of his time, but who, contrary to Pablo Picasso, he very much elevated women. I won't be able to quote you words by words what he said, but he's very famous for this quote saying that women do not have any creative capacity, but they are able to create, to emanate some inspiration for artists. So we're not, you know, at this stage of acknowledging the capacity of women to be creative, yet we somehow acknowledge at this point that they're a source of inspiration. So in here we have the Madonna of Port Liga, made in 1950. Do you guys have any comment regarding this piece? I know that obviously we prepared the presentation together. Do you guys have any comments at this stage? No? So in here, we have a depiction inspired by the Virgin Mary, obviously. Through basically the one of his muse and obviously wife, so Gala, who was Russian. I mean, she was educated in Europe, but she was born and raised in the Empire of Russia. So what's very interesting is that Gala was basically, should I say, the business development manager of Salvador Dali, and also the muse. Yet, I believe from, you know, going through the sources and the research, I believe she was pretty comfortable being in the shadow and just, you know, being celebrated as a muse. But what's very interesting in here is that we're talking about artists whose careers have been built somehow thanks to women. I mean, when you think about Picasso, Salvador Dali, you will directly refer to, you know, their work depicting female artists. So when it comes to this piece, so the figure is tremendously fragmented. I mean, just like any piece of surrealism, most specifically made by Salvador Dali. So here we have basically many symbols. We have the Virgin, we have the religious, we have the mother, we have also the caring personality emanating from this piece, all that together. Yet, so as you may know, Salvador Dali was very much interested in religious symbols, psychology studies. He was passionate about Freud, and so basically many of his pieces are basically a cocktail of his interests. Do you guys have any comment? Sorry. Jolaine, do you have any comment?
I mean, I think he was a mystic. He was a really interesting person. He's not my most favorite artist. And I would say that in the tradition where I grew up, we didn't spend a lot of time on Dali because he was sort of outside of a particular tradition. And so I must tell you honestly, all of you, I am not an expert, but I do respect the way that he had a path. And his path was really like an interesting path. that was out, but it was outside of the kind of cool kids of what was going on at the time. His practice was so different, and it was really like spiritual, intellectual, and it was a very different kind of practice.
Definitely. Very avant-garde for that time.
Yeah.
Definitely. What about you, Astrid?
Well, I just want to rebound to what you said about a woman being a muse, an inspiration for a male artist. But often, if not the women were artists themselves, they could also be, as you said, perfectly agents, supporting them in their career, helping them to have more time for the production while they were prospecting, for them. I know that, for example, there's a case, the case of Camille Claudel, a sculptor who was a collaborator of Auguste Rodin. I'm sure you have heard of this sculptor. The one who did one of his masterpieces is the Thinker, the one like this, your picture. So Camille Claudel was working with him like constantly in the studio. Apparently she was also like the one really doing some of the work on the hands, on the drapery.
Absolutely.
But it's only like very late that she was recognized as an artist herself, as a sculptor, and there was a museum even built for her in France. I remember there was back in 2017, something like that.
So at the end of the day, based on the examples and the illustrations that you've just given, don't you think that this movement of feminism, which is very much pertaining to our society, don't you think in a way that it allows us to, remove the dust from what we know about history of arts? Don't you think that it really allows us to discover the tremendous...
And it starts with, but this is not so new. Because when I was in university, I think it's 1971 that Linda Nochlin wrote the article that said, "Why have there been no great women artists?" Was it 1971? Yeah. So this conversation is not new. It's 2025. That makes a lot of years, 55 years ago. So I think that this rediscovery of women and their role in this world has been happening since 1971. I know Linda Nochlin and her entire career, and there's a huge, amazing group, Griselda Pollock, Lucy Lepard, all of these feminist art historians have been doing work reviving this and bringing these stories to light, these histories to light from the 70s onward. So I don't think it's so new, but I do think it's something that needs to continue to be discussed, because I think that you can't think of Rodin without Claudette Colbert. You can't think of Pablo Picasso without all of his women and lovers. And I think that that's something that we need to continue to talk about.
Definitely.
You're right, absolutely. I was actually thinking of those moments in time, mid-20th century, late 20th century, when scholars like started to rediscover female artists, reevaluate also their significance in art history. Over the summer, I had the chance to visit a beautiful exhibition that was a solo show for Artemisia Gentileschi that was in Paris, and she's like an incredible artist from the 17th century. Yeah. But she was very often associated to her father, a very prolific painter. So at the time that she was working and living from her art, she's one of the very few from that time in Italy. It was the Baroque time. She was very successful, but then for centuries we kind of forgot about her, and we associated her to her father. Like often artists were associated to male related. So then, I was very happy to see a show dedicated to her work. I know that also the National Gallery in London acquired one of her pieces. So it shows that there's an evolution, as you said, Jolaine, like even major institutions, museums that keep acquiring more pieces by these female artists that did have an impact in art history.
Which, so this, certain sense of evolution, which allows me to talk about the evolution in Andy Warhol. So, when it comes to Andy Warhol, so obviously, the father of pop art, American artist, born and raised in Pittsburgh, 1928. So what is very interesting is that the representation of women with him rhymes with his obsession for femininity, fame, but also mass consumption. And what's very interesting with Andy Warhol is that he depicted women as icons in their respective field. Marilyn Monroe as an accomplished yet depressed actress. Elizabeth Taylor. But also with this will of um, pushing very deeply the visibility of those women in a very commercial way. Andy Warhol was one of those contemporary artists who was obsessed with screen prints, notably when he started to establish the factory in New York. He was very interested in printing techniques, and with Andy Warhol, so obviously we have a total different approach when it comes to Salvador Dali and Pablo Picasso. He was definitely an artist, I believe, who fruitfully loved women. Maybe not the way we would expect, but he loved femininity. He loved also the power of beauty, um, the influence and the power that those women had on men also at the time. Obviously, one of the most famous female celebrity that he depicted was Marilyn Monroe.
But he also understood icon. Like this was iconic. He understood why the power of Marilyn was such a power. He really, in the multiples and all of that. But how do you deconstruct this woman who is so incredible into something that then becomes multiplied and multiplied and multiplied? And does she still have that incredible presence? And she does. Right. So he's really he actually was quite a groundbreaking artist for making an idea that is not unique. Right. I mean, we always think about what was Picasso. Picasso had his periods, the blue period, the red period, and he had the cubism. But what Warhol did was something totally different, because he said, my genius isn't in making or technical innovation. It's about not touching anything at all. And that becomes a conceptual genius, right?
Exactly. What's funny is that he considered the common as exceptional, as iconic. And when it comes to depicting iconic figures, most specifically during his time, we can also understand why the specific focus on women, because when you think about, the 60s, the 70s, and, the uprising of Hollywood worldwide, when you think about it, Hollywood icons of that time were mainly females. I mean, I do not consider myself as a movie cinema specialist, but I feel like what made Hollywood famous are famous actresses. In the sense that, when you think about the 60s, 70s movie, you think about Audrey Hepburn, you think about Monroe, obviously.
Cary Grant.
Obviously. How dare I even forget her? So in here we are also facing, I believe, an era where what we considered as iconic and as prestigious, culturally speaking, were very much associated with female figures. Do you guys have any other comments before I
can just add that what is interesting about his work also was that, as you said, he was commenting on how society at the time, like especially mass media, was portraying women and how they were also using the feminine figure for making kind of products. But I feel like there is a debate also, maybe the fact that, like, is he criticizing it? Is he celebrating it? Because with this also technique of repetition, like, isn't he also like using the portrait of a figure, a female figure, to make the comments? Like, isn't he like consuming it after all as well? I don't know if there is a debate.
Absolutely. In a way, when you think most specifically about Marilyn Monroe, she has become a mass consumption product. I mean, in any kind of store, you can find some, very cheap, canvases of Marilyn Monroe portraits. Most specifically, I remember when I was a kid in France, in department stores, just like, Maison du Monde, Jiffy. I mean, it has become, a consumption product. All right, now we're digging into my. Do not even expect me to be objective when it comes to Frida Kahlo and Louise Bourgeois in a moment, because I love those women. So when it comes to Frida Kahlo, what I adore about those pieces is that she had a certain ability to look through her wounds through art, notably through symbolism. Um, in here, for example, you can see that Frida Kahlo is not a passive subject. With every elements that are surrounding her and with every symbol, she is very much telling a story about a woman who's been facing, um, uh, some tremendous health issues. Also, some issues with her longtime partner. And through this portrait, obviously she doesn't seem to look at us. She seems to look at the floor. But you can very much feel, I believe, a feeling obviously of sadness, of depression, which directly hits you, even if you do not know who this woman is. I really like the ability to of Frida Kahlo to strike you with her self portraits. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah, the psychological depth that we mentioned earlier that was lacking in some of the portraits that we could see, for example, Madame Moitessier by Ang. Here you said it perfectly. I mean, self-portraiture, I think it's important to mention that for women, it's not anything neutral. It's really something for them, first, to assert themselves as artists, because self-portraiture is definitely an important technique to master in modern painting. So they want to assert themselves as, like true artists, but at the same time, they want to speak up for and about themselves. So here she is showing like who she is deep down. She wants to show herself in her own way and not let anybody else depict herself.
I think one of the challenges, here's my pushy part, is that I think that when a lot of the early art history from a feminist perspective started coming about, they really focused only on biography. And they made the biography so pathological that they didn't allow that difference to exist. And I think for me, there's a bit more now of a recollection that obviously Frida Kahlo's work is very self-referential and autobiographical. But I don't think that it necessarily relates entirely 100% to fact. I think that the stories and the presentations that she presents are still fictional in a sense. I don't think that you can read them as autobiography. And I think that that's been a sort of a realignment of a lot of sort of feminist criticism over the years, is that we've spent too much time learning about these poor women's life stories. And then we do equal damage to them by not giving them agency. Like, we've all had difficult days, but
Okay, so women, do not complain about your issues.
but not, don't complain about it. I mean, that's what evening drinks are for with your besties. But I also think that not everything the way that you look doesn't represent everything about who you are, right? There has to be the slide. And
No, are you basically saying that despite all of your issues, basically, there is a certain inner power that, transcends all of the, I mean, you are not basically summed up to, issues and what's...
I just think it's simplistic to look at someone like Frida Kahlo and only feel sorry for her. I think that she managed to create an incredible body of work and live an incredible life despite all of the challenges. And all of us live an incredible life despite the challenges that we all have. And I just want to just push back a little against the too much biography about how poor her life was with her poor, partner, and just say, but she still made a lot of very strong work.
It's fine.
I did not say that at Dubai Mall.
And you can see in the portrait, the computer is off, but you're right actually that she also wants to show, as you said, Youness, also like this symbolism. Like it's really showing also like her inner fantastic world that she had and that she was so unique for.
And I believe she is among one of those artists who really allowed us to develop an interest in Latino artists. From what I know, at least at her time, there were not specifically any. From what I know, once again, there were no other celebrated, Mexican Latino female artists. And I think, just like you said, I mean, she basically put the very first stones, and she paved the way, basically, for some other Latino artists, female or male, by the way. So, I also share your opinion in the sense that Frida Kahlo transcends this whole woman empowerment thing. And then I'm gonna try not to, talk about her for 2 hours, but I have to talk about Louise Bourgeois. So this is a picture that I taken as I co-curated the Louise Bourgeois I've Been to Hell and Back, and let me tell you, it was amazing exhibition in Mori Art Museum in Tokyo. Yes, that was the name of the exhibition. It's very long. So this exhibition took place a year ago exactly in Mori Art Museum. For those of you who don't know, Louise Bourgeois is simply one of the most important modern artists. She was French, born and raised. And what's very interesting with Louise Bourgeois is that she has never made self-portraits. Never. Her work is based on, once again, symbolism, psychology, and what is among her most famous pieces, we have the spider. So, for a lot of us, the spider wouldn't have that much of a positive image, right? As soon as we see spider, we want to kill it. But actually for Louise Bourgeois, the spider had a very nice image because it was supposed to represent her mother. Her mother used to be a weaver. And so we can basically see the connection between her profession as a weaver and the spider creating its net. Also, we have to keep in mind that the spider, notably according to Freud, is very much that creator that embodies this image of sacrifice, because certain species of spiders can serve as first meals for their babies. So Louise Bourgeois, she had a fantastic relationship with her mom, and when she passed away, she was around 19, 20, and she was overly depressed. And she has created those series of spiders, smaller, bigger sizes, called mommy in French. And what is very interesting is that through the depiction of those motherly childhood reference, Louise Bourgeois was telling so much about her life, her path, without depicting herself. She was also depicting herself through symbolism, through certain faces of her life that she depicted through art, which is very much original, because self-portraits are fine, but it's the same code, if I may say, the same image that we are facing. And with Louise Bourgeois, it's even deeper into, we have to dig deeper into the analysis. It's related to what I said in the introduction, saying that for me, you cannot understand art if you do not push the boundaries of research. This spider looks fine or scary, okay, whatever, but what does it mean behind? Do you guys have any comment?
Just a personal comment, actually. I remember standing below one of her 30 feet high spiders that still is in Ottawa, in front of the National Gallery. And it's true that you have a mixed feeling. You're either feeling scared or protected. So I feel like this is something she beautifully conveys in her work, and I'm sure that this is something she was working on, this duality. Definitely. Of either protection as motherhood, with the spider babies, in the womb, I remember there was like marble pieces that were resembling those.
Yeah, you could see them
babies,
inside.
right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah,
see
yeah.
them. It's quite fascinating actually as a technique as well. But then obviously it's a spider, as you said, it's a universal figure.
Absolutely.
So I feel that she works on that duality for the position of the woman.
I think the other thing about, self-portraiture that is a kind of an interesting thing is that if any of you have ever taken an art class in art school, it tends to be the first assignment that you get in your first or second and for me when I was going through art school, that was our first assignment every term and everything. And I think that questioning of as you're trying to become an artist or as you're learning to develop your artistic skills, what do you look like? Who are you? I remember one year I was a bit cheeky, if you can imagine, and I had this project, and I was in photography class, and I took my shoe and I threw it in the backyard and I photographed it, and guess what my grade was? A because because I when you just but then and I thought, oh haha, I cheated the system. But I actually think that it actually was quite good in terms of me thinking about who I was. And I think that practice of, as artists, thinking about who are you is a really significant one, whether it's physical and visible, like in some of the earlier ones, or like what, I mean, Louise Bourgeois, you never hear about her work without it being autobiographical. And like you were saying, you never see a picture of her. And I think that that's a really interesting point in this conversation is that you can be autobiographical and have it like Frida Kahlo, where you see her, but then you also have it like Louise Bourgeois, where it's all autobiographical and you don't physically see her appearance, but as you spend time with the body of her work, you do feel like you know her. And I think that's a really interesting, those 2 points are really strong examples of what's happening.
Absolutely, and also, most of her works are very relatable. Alhamdulillah, I had a very safe childhood, but still somehow the way she tells about her relationship with her parents, it's still something that you can relate. I mean, most specifically when you're growing up. So, yeah, definitely. Now I would like to, because you guys also had references when it comes to what's being made now. So what about now? How do female artists portray themselves, represent themselves? As the UAE cultural and art scene is getting bigger, we have so many artists to quote from, but obviously we had to make a selection. So without any transition, so here are the pieces selected by Jolaine.
So I wanted to show you, and unfortunately, we went a bit historically. These works are, historically in the last 10 or 15 years of being produced. I wanted to talk about 3 different artists who do very different things. On the left, you see an image of Lala Essayadi. And how many of you know Lala's work? Yeah. No, okay. So Lala is a Moroccan artist, and she spent some time she grew up in Morocco. She lived in Saudi for a number of years, and then she moved to America, where she lives today, in New York. She works with a gallery called Edwin Hook. So this is one of her, I worked with her for about 10 years, and this is sort of one of her 3rd major series. Her first series that she did she really was interested in the gaze that men place on women, and also Orientalism. And many of you have seen these sort of Oriental romantic portraits of these French men who oftentimes never went to this part of the world and drew these fantasies of what women were doing in these haram, in all these secret spaces. And so what she does is she pushes back, but you don't notice it immediately because you're still seduced by the beauty. You're still seduced by all these sort of tropes. And she often used, in some of the earlier work, she would pose the women exactly in the poses. You could find the side-by-side comparison of the French Orientalist picture that they used. In this portrait, which I chose because this is sort of the sauciest of them all, the gold are all bullets. And so on the skin of the women, she writes with henna. And the henna, but she writes calligraphy. And so the calligraphy is a man's practice. Writing it with henna is a woman's craft. And so it's one of those if you know things, because often in the West, you wouldn't know that was a really radical act. And I mean, obviously, these women did actually have henna on them and were walking around with it on their faces. We know that henna would never go on your face. It would never be written with calligraphy. But she was using this to play with these tropes. And then the bullets, for her, bullets were what makes the world, like what really is happening in the world today. It's the exchange of bullets. So here, using the bullets is, again, another way of her looking at it. And I mean, these bullets were so complicated for her to get. They're spent bullets, and she had to clean them all out and get out all the loose gunpowder out of them, wash them, and then because she was using like the Moroccan hammam and all the Moroccan tiling, she would use the Moroccan tiling exactly with these bullets. So she does this where she's making something that looks seductive. It slides in. You think, oh, it's so gorgeous, like the Orientalist paintings. And she stops you with saying, I am creating this. I'm taking back my control, and I am really showing you, what are you looking at? Oftentimes, in this one, she's not facing the thing, but oftentimes the women look right out at you, and they really tell you, you want to look at me? I'm looking back at you. If you're going to look at me with all my sexy times, you're going to be looked at, and you have to be confronted by me. So she does one thing. I don't know if you want to talk about Lala before I go. I'm fiery. I'm sorry, guys. I love her. The second artist is Have Karaman. And Have is an Iraqi artist. She left Iraq during the war. She was exiled to Sweden. And then she went and studied in Florence. And the really interesting thing and then Have went on and moved to Los Angeles, and she's living in Los Angeles. And just, with those wildfires that just happened recently, she lost her home in the wildfires, which was also something. But a lot of her work is about displacement. It's about, loss of identity. And do you see what her body looks like? Do you see how, and she's an Iraqi woman, and these are all self-portraits. But why is her face that weird, white, pasty porcelain color? Why? Because she's playing with the angre that we saw back at the beginning of the work, and she wants it to use the ideal that as an Iraqi woman, she would never have the face color to be the ideal. And so she puts it in this porcelain color, but for her, she wants it to look almost ghostly. She wants it to look like she studied in Florence. She learned the master techniques of how, of all those artists. What's the spring? Yeah, exactly. So she plays with both, but the use of the white and the use of the porcelain skin is to not try to say, I am taking that back. I look like this ideal because I am an ideal. So she uses, oftentimes, she's got a lot of her work is like Frida Kahlo, very symbolic. The fabrics and the drapery, it's all, everything means something, and it means something that talks about the past, her history, and all of the sort of talking about all of the displaced and the challenges that exist when you are a displaced person. So I think she's also incredible. She works with the Third Line Gallery in Austercal Avenue if you're interested in her work. And then the last is Huguette Catalan. And she's an incredible Lebanese artist. This is a little bit earlier. This is 1968. And she came from a prestigious family in Lebanon. Her father was a president. She left and went to live on her own. And this self-portrait is really special because it's loose. It's not formal. The looseness of her line, she said something like, the line frees us all. And the way that she believed, like, this is not a perfect portrait. It's a loose portrait. It allows you to like slip and slide in how it moves and how she discovers things. And she really wants to have this really freedom. 1968, she left Lebanon, went to America and Paris, and she lived a great, she lived a beautiful life. And the line for her was, and the side of the line was a way of talking about self-portraiture in a way.
I have a comment. I should have guessed that she was Lebanese because, as soon as you sent me this piece, and I know that we have Arab people in the audience, I instantly thought about Fayrouz. Because, I mean, you see like the look of Fayrouz, I mean, it really does look like it. And in a way, I've never heard about this artist before, but in a way, I feel like maybe not out of will, but I feel like she also celebrated Lebanese beauty and, the
Desire,
iconic also
eroticism. There's a lot more for you to look at that's beyond this screen.
Maybe. Should be.
But I just think what I wanted to show you is that women are doing really interesting things with representing themselves. And for Lala, it's not herself, but it is herself in the sense of ourselves. And there were so many artists to kind of think about, but I wanted to sort of show three very different ways because women's lives and women's stories are diverse and complicated and exciting, and so this is just a little bit of fun in terms of women showing themselves in contemporary art today from this region, obviously, where it matters.
Thank you very much, Jolaine. So moving on to your reference, Astrid. So what I love about Astrid is that we pretty much have the same tastes when it comes to contemporary artists. So please, تفضلي.
Leading artist, but considering the time and how rich your presentation already was, I just wanted to mention one artist that is very dear to my heart. I mean, I could not have accepted participating to this talk about women and not mention Nikit Saint-Phal. So Nikit Saint-Phal is one of the most emblematic female figures of the 20th century. And actually, just what you were saying, Jolaine, earlier, the way she depicted herself, like as an autobiographical, aspect, she was like showing the Nana, as she called it, very vibrant. You may have seen her work, actually; those very vibrant, larger than life sculptures that emanate, positivity, strength, defiance. So even though she did go through like trauma, she was depicting like the woman as a very positive, liberated figure. And this is a personal photo that I had the chance to take, a couple of photos from her Tarot Garden, which is one of her major projects that she executed not long before she passed. And this is like a project that is beautiful because it does show how the bodies are exaggerated or much larger than life. And I remember her saying that she really wanted, her desire was to see men smaller than her enormous Nana. So I just thought it was funny as a comment as we were talking about how male artists were depicting women, and as a female artist, she wanted to assert herself as an artist with these vibrant figures.
It is in fact some quite monumental pieces by
Taro Garden, if I may say as well, it is in Italy and it is available for viewing. It is hidden in the beautiful nature of Tuscany. And it really is a hidden gem. And when you're in front of those pieces, you do feel quite small.
and I mean, you just made the perfect transition because you know you remember one day on the phone we were talking about the importance of implementing art pieces in urban outside spaces to foster art education. And you know, as per what's happening right now in the region and the initiatives that are being taken, I'm just so, you know, positive when it comes to the future of art and culture in here, and I'm tremendously, you know, grateful to be part of it as it's ongoing right now. I mean, we're still seeing a lot of integrations, artistic integration in urban outside spaces. So that was a perfect example of what, you know, what this can result. So thank you very much, Astrid. When it comes to my references, very quickly, you know, they say Algerian people are very proud, and I have to support the stereotype because I wanted to rely on examples made by female Algerian artists. So the very first one I wanted to talk about is by Mahideen.
She had an exhibition maybe 2 years ago at the Sharjah Art Museum, if any of you saw it. And it was a major exhibition that really was very exciting. And there's a beautiful catalog that exists about her practice that came out of that exhibition.
She did, and most of her pieces are actually part of Dubai collection, and I mean, many other collections throughout the UAE. I mean, she has been very much celebrated these past few years in the region. So Baya is an Algerian artist. She was born in the beginning of the 20th century when Algeria was still a French department, was still a French colony. And what is very interesting with Baya is that she was fruitfully representing Algerian women in their intimacy, uh, spending some times here with. So here you have what's that called? Sorry, in English, a peacock, which is a very important symbol in Algeria. It's supposed to represent beauty. You know, the peacock in most Algerian traditional garments, just like the karakou or the kaftan, is I mean, pretty much everywhere. It's a representation of eternal beauty. And what I love also about Baya, thinking about it, I should have also put another picture about her depicting women playing music. And you know, in Algeria, I mean, I was gonna say in Algeria, but in North Africa, and يعني ممكن بكل العالم العربي, I mean, even throughout the whole Arab world, music is has a huge place not only in our culture but in female communities. And in Algeria, we have this tradition which is called a madahat, which basically refers to those group of women playing music between women and dancing, you know, all together in marriages, religious ceremonies, whatever. I also wanted to talk about Horia Nieti, a skyrocketing female artist right now. She was born in the 40s, 1942, 1943, 48, I'm not sure. Uh, who doesn't even hide, you know, her feminism, you know, commitments. So in here, we have a piece that was made in 1982. Pretty interesting, by the way, in a period of time, the 80s, where Algeria was massively investing in contemporary art and you know, museums development, whatever. And here she made a painting called No to Torture, which is a direct reference to Eugène Delacroix's Woman of Algiers in their apartment, which is exhibited at Louvre in Paris. So what's very interesting is that Horia Nieti, she grew up being a teenager. So while she was a teenager, it was the War of Independence in Algeria. And she was, I'm not going to dig into details, but she has been through some uh, uh, many dramatic, you know, events, obviously, during the war. And at the independence of Algeria, when she started to study art, she started to she started to find an interest in how European Western artists depicted the Orient and Arab countries. You perfectly talked about it. The huge majority of Orientalists were obviously French, and what you guys have to know is that those French artists, they were usually commissioned by the French colonial administration to produce arts to basically introduce them to the elite people back in Paris, back in France. And in here, so obviously we have a harem, which is depicted, in which very secretive things take place. And she completely, she really wants to move on with those depiction of, those Arab women as, sexual figures, and she want passive, obviously, figures. And in here, she represents those silhouettes using different colors, masking their faces, not in the will of suppressing their existence, but in the will of erasing their potential of attraction, notably towards men. And even though we know face is to be distinguished in here, she still chooses some very nice vivid colors for each woman. And in a way, I would interpret it in a way to acknowledge, the different personality and the existence of women, but not through men's gaze. And obviously, any piece of art, many pieces of art are gripping and important, but this one, allowing us to compare both visions and depiction of women, is somehow, a little striking to me.
This comparison is a really nice example of also what Lala Essayari has done. Is she's taken these same kind of things where she's taken the original Orientalist portrait and posed the women in exactly the same way, in this same way. This mechanism is really a great way of sharing and taking back power from these images that they're not real. Let's be honest, they're not real.
Absolutely. I think to be honest, I wouldn't have been able to put up a better conclusion. It's not real. Most male depiction of women are very much iconic but fantasized. Do you have anything else to add as a conclusion, Astrid?
I can only end this lovely discussion, insightful discussion on positive highlights, to answer what about now. Equality is not yet achieved, but there is such a wonderful progress, and we did mention quite a few initiatives by institutions, museums, but I just wanted to also highlight some other progress. For example, really renowned galleries that are now also representing more and more female artists emerging mid-career. There's one artist that I've been following for the past few years, Jolie Curtis by Gagosian, and she does also depict the private lives of women from her own perspective, with her own contemporary lens. So I'm glad to see those, initiatives. And since we are in Dubai Mall and we are surrounded by beautiful luxury houses, luxury maisons, I feel there's also a growing interest to integrate pieces of art by female artists within commercial spaces to elevate the cultural aspect. And this is something that we see growing here. There was this Kuwaiti artist that I discovered at Minart Fair, which is the Middle Eastern North African fair. That is a Gulf-based initiative that was back a couple of years ago in Paris. This is a fair where I discovered this Kuwaiti artist, Alimama Hashed, and she just recently did this collaboration with Dior for the 10th anniversary of the Lady Bag. So it's just beautiful to see those collaborations coming to life, and collaborations that I'm also working on. And I would invite you to see a piece that I recently curated with Hazal Kubaisi. She's an incredible Emirati artist, and this is at the Nespresso Boutique at Mall of the Emirates. So it's just to show those different positive highlights that keep on creating beautiful, meaningful, and impactful associations with not only female artists but also artists from the region.
I think the exciting part about Dubai that I always, people come in and say, oh, how do they foreigners from the West will come. And especially they'll ask me, how do they treat women? And I'm like, you would never understand how lucky women have it here. We walk almost anywhere in the world at 3:00 in the morning and we have no problems. And we really, when you look at the galleries in the Dubai and El Cercal, for example, most of them are owned by women. Nearly all of them, half of their program is women artists. We really have some great, strong women. The government at the UAE, they're 50% of the government is women, and they're promoting education and all the things. We are really lucky to be living in this time and to be living in Dubai. So I think that we have to say that women have a great time living in the UAE.
And can I add something, Jolaine? Because there's something also that is noticeable, like the highest percentage of postgraduate students, whether it is an artist or an art professional in cultural heritage or in art market, just like what I studied, that's the highest, they are women, that's the highest percentage. But when it comes to the active world, women represent the lowest percentage of the active professionals. So I also feel very grateful to be able to do what I do, and I feel like it's the same for you, Jolaine. We're both women active in this industry, the art industry. So we can say that we're grateful.
Ladies, I've had a blast being part of this talk with you guys. Once again, thank you very much, you guys, for being here. Thank you very much for your patience. Most specifically, if you guys have any questions or remarks, please don't hesitate. Thank you very much once again.